I'm excited to announce we have another season of Chip Chat coming aboard. I have an amazing list of guests, and I started off with a really cool guest to get this season rocking. Glad to be back. We have taken a little bit of a hiatus with everything going on in the market, so it's fun to get back into the saddle and have some great conversations. And I do think that this season will give us an opportunity to really explore what's going on in the market today. And hopefully for our listeners, at least my goal with every podcast is to get one or two takeaways that can hopefully help you and create conversation or ideas around what we're doing. So without further ado, I want to introduce my first guest for this season, Justin Ryder. He's with SVN Stone, and I'm going to turn over and let Justin give his intro.
Chip, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Chip Ridge, ladies and gentlemen, Louisville's number one connector.
Yeah.
Killer guy and friend. It's been a joy to get to know you here recently. And like you said, Justin Ryder, I'm a commercial real estate broker with SVN Stone and a consultant for Bluegrass Business Advisors. Both of those companies are centered in the heart and soul of Kentucky, not to offend any of your Louisville listeners, but Lexington, Kentucky, home of bourbon, birthplace of horses. I probably said that wrong, but today's a Keeneland Day, Chip, as you can see, dressed for it.
Yeah.
So we're Lexington through and through in this wonderful market. I have been full-time engaged in deal flow, commercial deal flow since 2018. So, about 5 years of just grinding with commercial deals, wonderful clients, wonderful properties, wonderful state to be doing business in, as you know. And you and I have even got a chance, we share some relationships and mutual. So hopefully we'll fire up some deals here soon in whatever market there's business to be done. So it's an honor to be the first guest on this season.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you for a lot of different reasons. One, you're a lot of fun. Two, I think I've been following you on LinkedIn here and really impressed with just how you're going about doing your business, how you're thinking about the business, and then more importantly, how you are evolving in this ever-changing environment. So just really wanted to dive in a little bit on today's marketplace, because if you and I would have jumped on here a couple of years ago, we'd be talking about a lot of different elements. It was all about, cap rates being super compressed. If money was flowing, the banks were piling stuff into the marketplace as quick as they could. And it was sort of like, I hate to say it, it sounds terrible, but shooting fish in the barrel. Now it's pivoted, and it's not to say deals aren't getting done, because I know you're doing a lot of deals, but there's new tools that you're having to bring to the party, and you're having to problem solve differently. So just wanted to get, I guess, some trends that you're seeing right now with the clients that you're engaged with, and things that, how deal flow is looking right, in today's space.
Yeah. How about this? I'll do one negative and one positive.
How about one negative and 8 positives? No, one negative and 2 positives. I'll be like my kids. Take one no thank you bite.
Yeah. Well, but I'll start with one. You mentioned LinkedIn. So regardless of if you're breaking into the business right now and people are telling you, oh, this is such a downturn. Like, first of all, that's a great time to get in this business, is when things are slower. And I'll mention why in a second, but one small takeaway is post on LinkedIn every day. Like, LinkedIn is a changing platform. It used to be literally just an interactive resume, people touting only promotions, very mechanical, very corporate. A couple things, largely the influence of Twitter influencers that jumped onto the LinkedIn platform, which is my favorite platform, although I'm on Twitter as well. But it's made it a little more informal, and people's posts are a little shorter, a little more digestible. And I encourage everyone I meet, especially if you're new to the business, document your journey, the things you're learning. Do one post a day, throw it on there. I know people are scared to. I've had people reach out to me and say, my boss and or overseer doesn't want me doing that or something like that, which is a totally different conversation. But I have met multiple clients and made hundreds of thousands of dollars of commissions from people commenting on LinkedIn posts and then DMing me, and a relationship forms from that. So, Chip, we can talk about this later, but one of the things I'm super passionate about is creativity infused brokerage. So, not just being a standard broker, but infusing your brokerage world with creativity. Social media is a big part of that for me. And certainly in this environment, creativity to get deals done in a higher interest rate environment is coming into play a lot. So I'm looking around, Chip, we've got like 12-ish at SV and Stone. We have about 12 advisors that are just actively every day trying to serve clients, sell properties, lease properties. What I see in them right now is scrappiness. And I'm not saying that any of these individuals weren't scrappy 2 years ago, but there was a little bit more of an attitude of, I need to choose what I work on. What I work on is probably going to close. What I'm seeing in them right now is I'm going to take stuff that I may not necessarily have taken 2 years ago. Like I'm going to lease a 5,000 square foot warehouse. I don't care. I'm going to take a smaller sale. I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to get the rep, you know, in the God's gift to the industry is momentum. So anything you can do to get momentum, to me, is what you should do.
You're preaching
Um,
my language, my love language, Justin. A couple of things.
Momentum is your love language, Chip.
Love
I know it.
language. I'm all about momentum, especially at the
Yeah.
craps table. But that's a different story for a different podcast. A couple of things that I want to touch on that you were just commenting. One, with regard to LinkedIn, one thing that I have been very impressed specifically with your strategy, if you want to call it that, around LinkedIn, is it seems fairly intentional, but it also seems authentic. So it's not a clip and paste type of approach. When I first started in the social media platform space, one, I was pretty guarded with my own personal life. Didn't really want to put it out there. And then where I think I really made the bigger mistake was I was third partying a lot of it. So I had somebody doing it. So it really wasn't me speaking, it was somebody speaking on my behalf. And what I found is, yeah, the frequency was good. Yeah, there was, every now and then I would get some engagement, but candidly, it really wasn't me. And
Mm-hmm.
it just didn't, and so I took a step back probably 3 years ago, or maybe a little bit more than that. I'm started in the title business when I was 12, so you have to put that all in context. But the you don't get a forehead like this just arriving in the business like 2 years ago. It takes some
Yeah,
closings, bro. It takes some
that's right.
closings. But back to that though. So I think what you're doing in LinkedIn, if anybody's not following Justin and you're listening to this podcast, I would strongly recommend it. One, some really great takeaways. And I find myself, I scroll a lot through it. I try to spend
Mm-hmm.
a little bit in the morning, a little bit at night. I'm not on there all day
Lurking. Lurking
lurking.
is what the kids call it on
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
And the thing I like about it is that it can keep you up to date. When I have some downtime at night, that's when I'll go through and I'll start to sort of pluck the articles that make, I might even earmark them for later so that I come back to them. But no, what you're doing there. And then the other thing, sort of talking about the momentum, is I was actually at an event this morning. Bank hosted a professor talking about economics, and of course, it was all about interest rate impacts, this, that, and the other. It wasn't all doom and gloom, but when I was talking with a broker there, a commercial broker, she was like, "I'm having a record year," and what I would attribute that to, just knowing her specifically, is if you were going to tell me one word that I would describe, and I won't name her because she might not love my word I'm describing her as, but scrappy. I mean, she head down, not afraid to go crush a big deal, small deal, medium deal. I mean, she's selling fourplexes and 36 unit, all in
Right.
the same, vein, and maybe to the same client, which is what's amazing. So I love where you're going with the scrappiness, because I think that in this market, if you sit back and you just read the headlines and you go to the water cooler or go to the wherever you go to share information or share ideas, you're going to get a lot of sort of negative headline risk that comes with it. And I think you just have to, that has got to be noise, because that's nothing you can control on that fact.
Yeah, and Bo Barron, do you know Bo Barron
Yep.
from Owensboro? Great guy, CCIM. He's taught me a ton. And Bo was speaking at an event a few months ago, and the market had not quite yet started to turn, which it has now. And Bo had simply said, "Welcome recession, goodbye hobbyist." Like he basically gave a
Yeah.
four-word speech on commercial real estate, and I was like, "Wow!" Now, admittedly, this is my first cycle; it's not yours, which is amazing because you are what 28, 29 years
Yeah,
old. But
yeah. I'm
I don't know
like
how you've done it.
Benjamin Button. I'm going the other way.
Um, but that line has been reverberating in my mind for the last year. Hello, recession, goodbye, hobbyist. So, what does it mean to be a real estate professional, a deal maker in today's environment? To work with professionals, like, sure, the herd is thinning. And, you had asked me over email, which, by the way, I printed out your email. There's like 50 warnings against wire fraud. So thank you. That it's so funny how you,
Yeah.
but so, yeah, I can mention a few challenging deals, but what's nice is too, I can mention a lender who recently stepped up to the plate when others couldn't get a deal done and got it done as a professional in a higher interest rate environment. So I like the challenge. I'm not going to quit. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying right now to themselves. I don't know everybody's situation. There are some people I know of brokers that have changed jobs or left the industry because they're down 70%. Maybe they specialize in just one thing. That one thing is not selling anymore. What do you do? So I'm not making light of that. I mean, that to me is a very serious thing. But when I think about my own approach, I'm going to create a longer runway. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to get scrappy. I'm going to continue to put people first and try and serve people and be thankful. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're in the real estate industry in Kentucky, and
Or you're
if you're
drunk.
not, or you're one of Chip's cousins,
My 8 friends
uh,
that are here because they thought it was a potato chip podcast, and they're waiting for you to pull out the ranch Doritos and give your critique, but we'll hit
yeah.
that later.
But it's one of the best places to work and one of the best times to work in history. And so overall, I'm just really thankful. And I tell anyone that gets into this, get reps. Like to your point of scrappiness and the individual you mentioned earlier today, don't think about a transaction volume as much as possible for your situation. Just complete quality transactions. Try and get 20, 30, 40 reps. When I started in this business, I met with an individual who's actually a competitor who's a dear friend. And I said, well, how should I be thinking about this? And he said, why don't you try and get 45 quality transactions in your first year? And I was like, okay. So I started to do that. And then 9 months into it, ask a few people, and they're like, dude, that is crazy. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think I hit 38
That's amazing.
from that. That's a lot of transactions.
Yeah,
Now, Chip, by the way, had 38 closings yesterday.
yeah.
So he's like, that's amazing, that, but
That was back when I was 14, we did that.
but I just love that thought. So I'm very thankful. Two things you mentioned, a negative and positive about the industry. I'll start with a positive. One of the positives for me is we are in the midst of what business brokers, which again, I'm a consultant for a business brokerage here, which gives me a unique angle and take on the market and things. One of the things that business brokers are now talking about that affects everyone listening to this and you and I is the silver tsunami, which is the fact that baby boomers are retiring. Many of these baby boomers have built incredible businesses. They're going to exit those businesses along with the assets associated with the businesses, which in many cases is great real estate that's paid for, that the business is paid for over the last 20, 30 years. And in helping those people, I mean, I found a lot of momentum and positivity from reaching out to owner occupied real estate. And that I don't want to get too specific because we may lose audience members, but if you're a broker out there, great place to start. right?
That's a great. I mean, that's there you go. We hit at least my my bogey of one good idea on this podcast, and I can actually give a relatable story about my in-laws. And this has been a little bit ago, but my father-in-law was a tire salesman, and sadly enough, he didn't leave me the business, but that's a different story. Because my aspiration was, selling tires. But
You'd have been
he,
an amazing tire salesman.
I mean, Pirelli, Michelin,
Yep.
you name it, Firestone, baby. I would have been out there in the Firestone blow up suit. But he built this business, was very successful over the years, and was ready to retire. Did not have sort of an exit strategy for selling the business. And candidly, there was a lot of tire discounters, and some of those were sort of taking over market share. So his real asset, when it came down to it, he was able to sell some of it, but it wasn't sort of a lock, stock, and barrel deal, was the real estate. And so, to your point, we interviewed because he asked me to just sit in the room and not talk, which I'm not very good at, but listen and give him some feedback. And it was interesting, though, Justin, guys like yourself that could really wrap their brain around the highlights, what was needed for him specifically. We had one guy that sort of came in and pitched a co-development, and that was just way too much for him. He was like, I don't want to, I'm ready to retire. I'm ready. I want to get my monies, I want to get my money and I want to walk away. But full disclosure, part of me was like, well, Ted, you might want to consider this as an option. This could be a long landlord, triple net lease type of opportunity because it was a commercial space. But I just say all that because, to your point, those people, they're not looking at the interest rates. They're not looking at whatever. I mean, this is a while back, actually, in a cycle that was sort of a weird cycle. It was after the 09-10, but it was close enough. There were still some of those legacy issues plaguing the marketplace. And he didn't, his time horizon was today.
That's
if,
right.
if the broker could have brought him a deal today, that's when he wanted to sell it. So I think that's a wonderful sort of nugget for people to listen to. And it's pretty, there's so much data out there that could lead you to those folks. So it's not like it's a hidden matrix to figure out, who the business are, which ones have been longer. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can tackle that around identifying those prospects. So good stuff
Right.
there. Go ahead.
Yeah, and people laugh at, tenants sometimes are, brokers are up fighting for another quarter a square foot, and tenants are laughing, thinking like, well, this is just 6% of gross. Like, if you've got a great business, real estate is a very small part of that business. And as a commercial broker, it's my world. So I tend to think about it and put it on a pedestal. You know, if you've got a killer small business that's printing money, like, your real estate is an afterthought. But they're great deals. They're emotional deals. And if you're a small business owner out there and you want to get educated on that, look up a business broker. Call me. My information will be linked there. Call Chip. There's great people in Louisville. There's great people around the state. We're mostly Central Kentucky, but do deals all over the state. And you're right about the time. I mean, the timing is good if you're a small business owner wanting to sell. And that market has actually picked up because it's pivoted to the positive I wanted to mention when you talked about the real estate market, both the real estate market and just the business brokerage market in general. We're seeing a bunch of seller financing now, which is not great for my lender friends that are listening on here. And I understand that. But seller financing has allowed us to get a few deals done here lately that a lending institution couldn't complete, whether it's cash flow, it's usually an under market rate. The seller's in a position where they can do it. And so the International Bank of Seller, is open for business at this point. That's one positive we've seen in the market as we try to put our own spin on deals and creatively get them done.
Yeah, no, and I think, once again, going back to that creativity sort of tagline, is it comes down to problem solving. I think we in the transactional world unfortunately, one of the bad habits that got picked up through the past probably, 3 years is, honestly, deals were just easy to get done. There's no other way to put it. Now, there's always nuance and there's always emotion and there's always, uncertainty that comes into a deal. So I don't want to underplay the value that we played in those transactions. But going back to sort of some of the scrappiness and the momentum is, if you're able to, if you're busy in the market that we're facing now, you are going to be a superstar. And so it's important to sort of put your head down, get those deals done. Don't worry about what your peers are doing. Just go out and get deals done and help sellers figure it out. To your point, that seller financing is something that a lot of people, because we're hardwired over the last, this sort of the low money piece of it, they almost don't even, one, think about it, but two, they're like, oh, there's too much liability. What's this? What's that? And as I said, it's sort of like being a landlord on steroids in some cases, depending how you structure the deal. If you do it the right way, and as a seller, and you do the right due diligence, and you're working with the right folks to ask the right questions, to bring in the right transactional people in there, um, once again, you're a landlord on steroids because of the leverage position that you have. And so it just, there are ways to solve those problems in a marketplace, and in some cases meet multiple needs. Maybe it's long-term cash flow opportunity as well. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. So
It's awesome. Tax consequences, obviously talk to your CPA about it, but a great broker should be showing you the different roads that you can go down at this point. And there are way more roads, and they should have those. They should have a road map for you in a different market versus 2 years ago. There was sort of one road everybody was going down. And, there was great access to capital. Obviously, prices went through the roof. And now there are different roads on how to get those deals done. One is definitely seller financing.
And then another one that I saw, and will go a different route, but doing a long term lease, and a 99-year lease or what have you. There's some constructs to that, depending on what the business is, what the use is, what the outcomes are. Back to your point, you said earlier around, depending on what type of business it is and where really real estate fits into the business as a balance sheet item, there's an argument to be made in some cases for doing a long-term land lease, just because of some of the implications of the current marketplace relative to debt and so forth. So all good things. Okay, I wanted to sort of move on because you and I could get this thing, we'll be on here for a marathon. It'll be a 24-hour session. We're going to keep it within the boundaries. Real quick, just a couple things that you focus on daily. I think, you talked about posting on LinkedIn. Is there anything else that you sort of put in your daily regiment to sort of keep yourself in that scrappy mindset? So you're building that momentum.
Yeah. So personally for me, reading, writing, thinking, which I have about 15 seconds a day, it seems like, with 3 daughters, and a wonderful family with lots of activities. But if I can read, think, pray, maybe journal a little bit to start my day, I can launch into and then have, yesterday I probably said 15,000 words. It's probably 10,000 words too many, obviously, but at the end of every day, I'm pretty exhausted. And so to set up, and honestly, Chip, I read a lot about real estate entrepreneurs, which people think like, well, you probably should be reading fiction or something like that. Give yourself a break from real estate. It actually fuels me to read about the lives of great deal makers before I step up to the plate and do it myself. And a couple takeaways from that. I mean, I just read Into the Wind right here. This is not a paid advertisement, by the way. But, so Bill Butler of Corporex of Northern Kentucky just put out his autobiography. And he literally says in the beginning, he's like, someone told me to write a book. And I was like, who would read it? I don't know how many people have read it. I'm guessing a couple hundred at this point, of which I'm one. But he writes a lot about downturns in this book, Chip. And I was kind of like thinking about this time, and he's talking about the credit crunch of the early '90s, which neither of us were around for, obviously.
Yeah.
But
Don't know. I've never heard of the 90s, but I heard they were fun.
and if you have some broker stress in your life and you read about a developer or owner stress during a crunch time, somehow your brokerage stress melts away,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And so that has really helped me and set me up. I'm hoping to turn that into something, because like I'm a huge fan of, and this is a side note, but I'm a huge fan of Founders Podcast. And I'd like to create something in the future that's just for real estate entrepreneur and founders. I mean, there's so many wonderful stories, bootstrapped companies, just the idea of like something to your world. And I could turn this question right on you, is like, it's having an investment and building an investment in a single property is very different than building a company that does real estate investments. So that's one thing I've been thinking about as I've
Yeah.
studied these men and women who have done this. Is building a company is very different. Like, it's one thing to be an entrepreneur, it's another thing to lead a group of entrepreneurs on a mission. So reading that kind of stuff, thinking through that, posting on LinkedIn, my mom will hopefully read it, and a few others, and comment, and then I'm off and running after hearing some colleagues or friends' thoughts, and then get in the deals, calls,
So I've,
proposals,
I've
meetings.
figured out that you can get paid chatbots to comment. I'm teasing. I've got 3,000 chatbot friends through AI. See, there's your one
Yeah,
takeaway, guys. Go if you can't make friends, just create them.
you have been sounding a little mechanical recently on my
People say
comments.
they can't understand 98% of what I say, and I said, "Well, it's because of all my chatbot friends. We speak a different language."
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
well, no, that's good stuff. Well, we're getting close to the end of this fun. Couple things before we let our listeners go on their merry day. Talk a little bit about just so you are still, because you are young. You're still early in your real estate investment career, and I really wanted to turn it into maybe investment, but you could take it professional. You've spoken a lot about your professional space. I know though you're active in the investment world, and that journey is beginning, and so you're thinking about a lot of different decisions you're making now, which I'm curious how you're going about some of that, because I find it very interesting, because as I look back 5 years ago when I was getting in the business, all the mistakes I made. I'm curious what you're thinking about right now.
Yeah, I would say my mistake, and shout out to all the brokers out there who are, doing a bunch of deals and thinking, man, I should probably make time to look at my own investments. If I could mention a mistake, it's probably that I'm not spending enough time focused on individual properties and or investments that I can personally buy, or put together a group of people to buy, improve, and take chunks of equity. I'm okay saying that on a podcast. I'm sure there's a lot of brokers like me out there. You're focused on filling up your pipeline, serving people, getting deals done. I mean, that is my job and hobby slash passion. I love doing it. I'm not complaining about it. But I have had an opportunity. We've been fortunate in our office with a group of individuals to come across a few properties here or there. SV and Stone, shout out to my company. SV and Stone is a full service commercial real estate firm. So if we, find a property that is a great fit for us or for a client, someone's unique investment strategy, we can manage that property for them, do the bookkeeping, do the leasing. We're set up to handle that. So I love industrial. Has been I have put some money into some industrial projects and have been fortunate to do so. Our industrial market in Fayette County, which I'm basically working Fayette counties and the counties that touch it. So if think Scott County, Jessamine, Mercer, Woodford, Our industrial market is very tight and continues to be. Um, so great rents, great people, great tenants, a lot of owner occupants, looking to buy or lease something for their specific business. And so that's one thing I've been focused on. How about you, Chip? How do you focus on your own investment? And do you need a broker?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Wow. Hey,
I'm
ABC, always
playing.
be closing. You and I will have to take this offline. No, it's I've, through the podcast sort of shared a lot of mistakes that I've made over the years, and they're pretty well documented. But I think the biggest sort of aha moment that I've had recently is just, really getting, and this sounds so basic, so it's not a takeaway because people know it, but it really is about finding the right partnerships. That's what it comes down to. I mean, spending time and really getting to know the people that you're going to walk forward with, not only on a spreadsheet level, not only on a sort of an emotional level, but going all the way down to philosophically, are you aligned? Those type of things, because my experience will tell you that there are going to be moments where things don't go like they should on the spreadsheet, and you have to be able to navigate through that, and that is where you really get into the core of the relationship. So as you set these partnerships up, whether you're a general partner or a limited partner, I just strongly advise people who are getting involved in real estate transactions really get to know the people they're going to be investing with, because when things get a little tough, and banks react differently right now. Let's just call it what it is. Luckily, most of the people I know in the lending space, been through these cycles before, so they sort of have a bit of empathy slash problem solve slash let's get through it. But if you don't have the right lending partner, you could put yourself in harm's way. And same with the right development partner, the right broker partner who can come in. And I think you had a post yesterday, the day before, which I thought was really compelling. Like, if you've got a property right now and you've been sort of putting it on idle, and you haven't really thought about it, you need to at least think about it for a minute. Potentially get a broker price opinion on it, because
hmm
as we get through these lending cycles, you don't want to be in a spot where you haven't been actively thinking about what's going to happen if your rate's getting ready to change in a couple of years. What's the coverage ratio look like? I mean, there's some big boy questions that are going to come up, and the one thing that I'm sort of not concerned about, but I would say I'm keeping an eye on, is not all banks are going to be in the same boat, and so they're not all going to be able to do the same thing. So some banks will be able to work with their borrowers a lot more latitude than other banks, and that's just a function of the system we live in. The Fed comes in and they say, hey, your reserve ratio is not where it needs to be. Your capital, if you go under this coverage ratio, and I know I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but we've got a problem, and that limits what the bank can do. So I thought you were spot on with, hey, take some time, do a little bit do a health check, if you want to call it that. Um,
Yeah. And
and
most brokers will do it for free. At least
yeah,
we do. You know, get a broker's opinion of value, sit down with that broker over coffee. What's worst case here? What's best case? Can this property survive a 15-20% reduction in revenue? Like, what would that look like? Um, one hot topic right now with in the multifamily space is rising insurance costs.
yeah,
So what you were last year or 21, 22, what it costs to run a unit, a multifamily unit, is now up pretty significantly. To the tune of, like, let's say average of 12,000 a unit you used to cost, now it's 15 and change. So it's a huge difference, and a big piece of that is insurance. So run this, hey, this property, it's looking like I'm going to have an increase in my insurance cost. I was at 250 a unit. Now I'm going to be at 400 a unit. What does this look like? What does this look like for the bottom line? I've got a refi coming up in 18 months potentially. I might sell it. I might refi. What would that look like? You know, there are professionals out there that can help and get you in the right spot, point you in the right direction.
And what you want, this is my last, this is a takeaway. What you want to avoid, I would stress, is waiting until you are in a spot where you have to do something, especially as it relates to with the bank. So reach out to Justin and get engagement early, because then the options will be laid out. You can get a playbook in place. If you, Justin might say, well, hey, with this, this, and this, it looks like we're going to be tight here. You might want to contemplate whatever. Maybe you need to bring in some more capital. I mean, that those are just things that it is much easier to do when it's under your attention than it is if it's being sort of force fed on you, which is where we've seen in prior cycles. And this is a lot different of a cycle for sure. It's not what happened back in '08 and '09. And when people, when I was what 11, when people start to talk through those scenarios, it's just not even close. The macroeconomics are not even close. So it's an unfair correlation. The one correlation, though, that is real is that at the end of the day, the banks still have to work off of certain parameters by the guidelines. And therefore, you just have to know, you have to sort of have your knitting in place. Okay, before we jump off,
Okay.
go ahead.
I'm
Yeah,
going to change it. Chip, sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to turn it
yeah.
back on you real quick. So let's say you do want to sell or you do want to buy, and we've talked a ton about brokerage. What are one or two things people continually miss in the closing services industry? Like, what's something you, as in running millennial and closings, that you're typically advising people that they're not thinking about when it comes to closing services, something you guys provide?
Yeah, a couple on the due diligence, probably the biggest, and this is in the specifically in the commercial space we see is depending on the property type, but a lot is surveys. You've got you know if you're going to be buying or even selling, and you don't have an up to date survey, that is something because we just run in. People don't they don't appreciate the little nuance that comes with redevelopment. So one is survey. Get one. Get your hands on one. It's going to give you a lot of power and authority, whatever you want to call it, with regard to that. That's probably the one of the bigger issues. The other one that's interesting that I'll just throw out, something to think about, is we have seen some of these where properties are owned in an LLC, and it's that LLC, it's their single asset, and what they've been able to do, and it's not. I don't want to tell that this is comprehensive, but we've seen a couple of them. It's a pretty interesting way to sort of skin a cat. Is they've been able to sell that LLC and get a mortgage modification, so essentially an assumption deal. So they're keeping that rate in place. So if they've got like a 4.5%, it's really lender dependent. You know, if some lenders are they need to get those durations off of their books, others have a lot more flexibility. But it's an interesting way to tackle an issue and to create potentially going back to your creativity. It's a creative way to potentially solve for a value that you're looking for. So two
There you
things.
go. Talk to your attorney, talk
Yeah.
to your CPA, of
Yeah,
course.
no doubt. Those are
Um,
there's always the caveats. Well, last thing is just want to how do people obviously LinkedIn's one way to keep in touch with you. If you'll give sort of your contact information and hopefully our listeners have gotten something out of this. I've taken a page full of notes, so I've gotten a lot out of it. But they can reach back out to you with some follow up.
yeah, search for me on LinkedIn, just Justin Ryder, CCIM,
R
RYDER,
Y D E R.
that's right, like the moving truck. Not my family, kind of wish it was, but, and and I'm on Twitter as well at JT_Ryder. So JT_RYDER. Those are great places to connect. I believe my email is on both of those accounts. And yeah, shoot me a DM and follow along, and I'll also follow you and interact with the stuff you're putting out with, or stuff you're putting out there. I think in my experience, Chip, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this today, just because I'm stoked to get to know you. I never get down to Heine Brothers and St. Matthews, but I understand you're down there a lot, connecting people, putting deals together, which is great. That same thing is happening online, and a lot of it is not just the posting I mentioned earlier, post every day, but it's the follow up.
Yeah.
It's the consistent commenting, supporting what someone is doing, helping them build their interactive resume. I mean, you can do a lot in 7 or 8 minutes a day to bolster your network. So I'm trying to do that, and I think this is a piece of it. But just supporting people, putting people first, what they're doing. Um, we can all win, and that's the approach I try to take through this.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much. This has been a ton of fun, and I think hopefully there's been some. Like I said, I think we've reached the two takeaways. I'll
Yeah,
give you I'll
we'll
give
do it
you
again.
credit for 4 or 5 great takeaways, if not more. So thanks again for joining us on Chip Chat, and until next time, guys, take care.